Of course, Shatabisha relates to circles. Not only is its very symbol the empty circle, but it is also related to the circle in that it relates to the lasso, one of its weapons that it uses to trap and bind its enemies. It also relates to the circle in that, being the god of the waters of the sky, it is the firmament that traps us within our world. It is interesting that the symbolism of Aquarius itself is that of an individual holding a pot of water within which a given universe is contained. This individual not only exists outside of the pot of water, but also observes a collection of consciousness circling within it. So, Shatabisha relates to that force that binds, restricts, and traps consciousness within the bounds of whatever given universe one finds oneself. Shatabisha is the encircling wall of reality within which we are trapped. Whereas Purva Bhadapada is the stage where we escape this false reality created by the forces of Shatabisha. One of its symbols is 100 eyes or 1,000 eyes, and these eyes can again be contextualized as an entity existing outside of immediate reality and observing everything that occurs within reality. Naturally, it was said of the deity of Shatabisha, Varuna, that he did just that. Varuna is a god associated with space, as he essentially exists at the firmament or bounds of every reality, observing that which exists within those bounds. One thing should be especially understood about these circles, these walls that surround our reality and keep us from exploring beyond them. These walls are illusory. Before we continue on to the personality section, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel to encourage me to create more. Also, for much more astrological and mystical articles, join my Patreon. Because this nakshatra is sometimes desperate to be part of every group so as to benefit from the privileges of different social environments, they can literally invent whole personas based on what they believe is the general spirit of whichever group they want to infiltrate in order to better get on with its members. They spend a lot of time studying the individuals of each group in order to imitate the mannerisms, speaking style, and overall behavior of these individuals because they believe that in mirroring their behavior, they can be better absorbed into the group. For this reason, they can behave one way when they are alone with one person, exposing one side or one persona, but then behave a totally different way around another group of people where they expose another side or persona. One type of situation that can be a cause of great anxiety for the Shatabisha individual is socializing with two or more different friend groups at the same time, because they fear being exposed for being fake or for having their tendencies to invent an identity be exposed. They like to keep their friendship circles very separate. At their worst, they may suffer from an observable lack of self-esteem because they can be more focused on pretending to be something they aren't instead of really developing a solid sense of self. Shatabisha natives can desire too strongly to be liked by multiple different types of people and may be wary of developing too distinct a personality because personality is polarizing and they may risk pushing away different groups of people. Because they are also classified as Chala nakshatras, they tend to have social climbing tendencies and tend to aspire to be part of elite and high class groups, and that is why they oftentimes may adopt the mannerisms and way of being of people who exist in elite circles, so as to come off as belonging to those same circles. They are very socially astute and socially aware, and are very good at sizing up people and situations to know how to behave around them. Their eyes are so sensitive to stimuli and nuance that they can pick up on the slightest eye twitch, the slightest smirk, the most fleeting facial expression, and quickly discern what others are thinking and feeling, even when people are trying to conceal themselves. The eyes and mind of Shatabisha natives are nervous and somewhat scattered, as their eyes and minds are constantly jumping from one thing to the other, especially within a social setting with a medium-sized to large group. They can even sometimes suffer from a sort of analysis paralysis when in a new group setting with individuals that they don't know. They sometimes freeze, trying to carefully watch and keep up with the 1,000 stimuli at the same time, trying to study how this person is reacting to what that person is saying, at the same time trying to keep up with multiple conversations within the group at the same time. Though Shatabisha is very extroverted, they suffer a lot from social burnouts, as their minds work on overdrive whenever they are around other people, that after several days of socializing, they feel the need to lock themselves at home. and in their minds, they replay every single scene from their social interactions ad nauseum. Shatabisha suffers from a great degree of people curiosity. They are fascinated by different types of people, from the higher class to the lower class to foreigners, etc. They do not like to be excluded from any social circle, and even though they will publicly avoid individuals that are odd and weird and unconventional, lest they too are stained by bad reputation, in secret, when no one is looking, they may wish to fraternize with these same odd individuals. They may, in public, avoid at all costs any association with lower class individuals, or generally speaking, any sort of individual that may threaten their social standing. They may constantly aspire to be part of the most elite social circles while still maintaining a fascination for outsiders. If they are very socially ambitious, they may often conceal their true opinions and true politics if they believe they may fall out of favor with a group they are trying to integrate. They may even pretend to hold opinions that aren't truly theirs as well. Despite the fact that they hate to be excluded from any prestigious circle, they themselves exercise strict exclusionary practices to keep people out of their circle. This is because if a social group lets in any and every kind of person, it loses its power. Shatabisha natives seek power through socializing and infiltrating elite circles, but as part of maintaining the power of these circles, they feel the need to exclude other peoples from it. So it is this back and forth game of trying to force themselves into being included into certain groups while excluding others. Now, Shatabisha is indeed justice-oriented, and they do care a lot about social justice and trying to find a way of making society more fair, as they often resent the various restrictions that are put upon people on the basis of sex and race, for example. They understand the privileges and resent the fact that certain rights and privileges are denied to others on the basis of such superficial traits like one's appearance, one's class and background, etc. But whereas nakshatras like Ardra and Vishaka may be more openly rebellious, Shatabisha fears being too open about its disagreements with conventional society because they themselves are afraid of being ostracized, missing out on the various privileges that come from society. Instead, Shatabisha natives operate like double agents. They will on the outside pretend as though they are happy with the way things are working in society, but behind the scenes they may work to dismantle the various systems that oppress people. In fact, one of the reasons why many of them may aspire to greater and greater social and political power, pretending to hold opinions that they don't actually have, pretending to believe in things that they don't actually believe in just to get on with the elites, behind the scenes, they may actually aspire to that level of power so they can finally influence society in the manner that they wish, so that society can conform to their ideals. So much of their power comes from being able to infiltrate and influence groups, which is why they care so much about superficial things like the way that they dress, the way that they talk, who they associate themselves with, what their backgrounds are, and overall how they present themselves. Because even though they themselves resent how superficial these things are, and they resent how society can deny the most basic rights to people just on the basis of presentation, they know that these same superficial things have an effect within their social environment, despite what everyone says. And for this reason, they can come across as exceptionally superficial themselves. Because they often suffer from a lot of anxiety, they can be quite fearful of human emotions and reactions, as expressions of extreme emotions like anger, frustration, and even sadness can make them feel very uneasy. Despite being very neurotic, they may often externalize this, focusing more on controlling other people's behavior and reactions instead of teaching themselves how to be calmer and more still. These natives can be so policing of other people's behaviors and natural reactions that sometimes it can be difficult to exist around them, as they may be constantly asking you to tone yourself down, not speak too loudly, not to react too strongly, because they themselves are so easily disturbed by other people's reactions. It is almost as if the eyes, senses, and perceptual lenses of the Shatabisha natives magnify experience by 1,000. So when they hear a sound, it sounds to them louder than it sounds to others. Or when they see a color, they see it as more vibrant than other people see it. Therefore, when they observe other people's reactions, be it anger or what have you, they experience other people's reactions more intensely than even the people themselves experience their own reactions or their own emotions. They have very delicate nervous systems as they are easily bothered by the slightest stimuli in their immediate environment. Again, the senses of the Shatabisha native are magnified and they may experience tastes and colors and sounds more intensely than the average person. They tend to be easily agitated and suffer from a lot of anxiety once again, so much so that they look for aggressive means of calming themselves down, which is why they can become severely addicted to drugs as a soothing mechanism. One issue that Shatabisha natives tend to struggle with is that of the intellect divorced from experience, as it spends too much time observing and not enough time acting. It spends so much time studying that it then possesses the illusion of knowledge and the illusion of wisdom because all the information they acquired is not tempered by actual, tangible, individual experience or gnosis. Instead, it is knowledge that comes either from reading or watching. It is common for the Shatabisha native to believe that he understands a particular concept only because he has read about it obsessively or watched other people talk or perform a concept. The Shatabisha native will walk around convinced that he knows what he's talking about, and even go as far as to try to teach people all that he thinks that he knows. But the day he is made to actually practically perform his supposed understanding physically, he is embarrassed to discover how little he actually knows. Let us use the example of skateboarding. A Shatabisha native may be fascinated by the extreme sport of skateboarding. He may spend months watching television programs on the matter, knows the name of every skateboarding trick, studies obsessively how to feed our position on the board, etc. Now let us say this same Shatabisha native may one day come across a group of boys struggling with a particular skateboarding trick. He may observe them for a while and then decipher that they are amateurs and then approaches them with advice on how to execute the move. The Shatabisha explains and explains, but the boys still don't understand. Finally, the boys ask the Shatabisha native to perform the move so they can see it in action. The Shatabisha is a little nervous but concedes. He tries to execute it the first time, but fails. He claims it's nerves, but he tries the second time and fails again. He keeps trying until eventually the boys ask him, "Do you even know how to skateboard?" He keeps trying until eventually the boys discover for themselves that the Shatabisha native does not actually know what he is talking about. It is discovered that the Shatabisha native has never actually tried skateboarding before. This Shatabisha native walks away, embarrassed at himself, for it has dawned on him that actually, all this time he thought he knew about skateboarding, he was merely deluding himself, as he mistook reading and watching for actual knowledge. What he possessed was merely the illusion of knowledge, as nothing was based on experience. In the worst case scenario, Shatabisha natives may spend so much of their lives observing that they may actually not develop any real skills, but again, only ever possess the illusion of knowledge, the illusion of wisdom, and even the illusion of skill. Interestingly enough, astrologers recommend the earth mantra Lam to both Swati and Shatabisha natives to help them heal their intensely airy nature. The earth element relates to true understanding as it is based on experience. And of course, it is the element of planet Mercury that relates to skill. The Lam mantra is also one of the mantras associated with the deity of Jayasha Nakshatra, Indra, as it relates to success in the material world. When Shatabisha natives begin to actually act, to actually learn things tangibly and practically, they not only can develop themselves more quickly than most people, but they can easily become polymaths, individuals with a deep understanding of a wide variety of topics because they marry their intensely research-oriented and observant nature with actual experience, finally uniting intellect with experience, finally uniting observation with practice. But to belabor the point further, let us go more into detail on another example of Shatabisha natives having an illusion of knowledge, or in this case, an illusion of self-knowledge or an illusion of self-awareness. Shatabisha natives can often believe themselves as highly self-aware as they are constantly seeking to define and label themselves, but often they do so from a place divorced from experience. Instead, these ideas of themselves are often based on how they believe they would behave in a certain situation, only because they have observed or studied others within those situations and convinced themselves that they would behave the same or even better. They may, for example, imagine themselves as brave individuals because they have studied the situation from a physical and psychological distance, only to one day actually find themselves in that particular circumstance physically and find themselves embarrassed at the discovery of their cowardice. Or they could imagine themselves as people who would be very calm under pressure because they stand on the sidelines for very long and only observe others lose their cool in high-stress situations until they are placed in that situation. Because Shatabisha relates strongly to individuals who do not directly participate in society, but observe it from a distance, we could use the example of a priest to explain this. One complaint that many people have of Catholic priests and other such renunciates is that they give advice to householders and regular citizens on how to live their lives, and they think themselves morally superior to the everyday person. But these same priests don't actually participate within society, so they don't know what it's like to practice kindness towards a husband that abuses you, or practice patience towards an angry boss. Many priests can be seen as behaving in a judgmental way, thinking themselves more patient, more kind, more loving than the average person, but they themselves do not position themselves to truly test whether they possess those traits they pride themselves on. Instead, the stereotypical priest merely imagines himself as superior. The stereotypical priest in this case possesses the illusion of self-awareness, for the kindness and patience and wisdom he thinks he has is false, because he does not put himself to the test. And if he were to do so, he would be embarrassed at the realization that he is none of the things he prides himself on. This is one reason why Shatabisha can seem quite self-aware to themselves, but often their ideas about themselves are not always based on reality. And also their ideas of themselves may shift very, very quickly. At one point being convinced that they are one type of person, and at another point change their minds. They can be obsessed with personality tests and other such tools, and be very good at placing other people into those categories owing to their extreme observant nature, but struggle to find where it is that they fit because they do not always do a good enough job of taking into account how they actually physically and practically behave. And so Shatabisha natives suffer the most out of all nakshatras of the illusions of the intellect. For instance, they may overanalyze themselves to the point of confusion, over-focus so much on certain of their personality traits that they exaggerate their place in their behavior, etc. To rescue the Shatabisha native from his own intellect can be very, very difficult, because he will wrap himself in a web of his own faulty arguments that are based on his ideas of reality, divorced from experience, that they can even deny and reject alternative opinions, even those coming from people with actual, tangible knowledge, if this knowledge does not fit into their cohesive, imaginary model of the world. These natives have, even from a young age, a stubborn idea of how the world works, and they construct their own mental models of reality that they then overlay on top of reality. Their mental models have such a hold on them that even when actual reality contradicts their ideas, they still choose their ideas over concrete reality. One way of seeing this is by studying the way that Shatabisha natives observe other people. Shatabisha natives are very good at placing people into categories. They are very quick at developing personality profiles of someone and then placing them into very neatly created categorical systems. Shatabisha natives love carefully constructed category systems, so they take to such things as personality tests like the MBTI or the 16 personalities. And they even take to astrology as well, because somewhere deep down they tend to believe that all people can fit into a system. And so they either search for that system externally or they develop their own. And they also have a very fixed idea of other people that they developed very, very quickly without allowing themselves enough time to really study people and how they would practically behave within a situation. But the problem is many people do not fit very neatly into categorical systems. And what ends up happening is that the Shatabisha native, who is very confident of his systems, ends up forcing people into boxes they may not perfectly fit into. Let us use an example. A Shatabisha native could meet a person one day who skateboards and enjoys other such extreme sports. And on the basis of this, he constructs a quick personality profile or fits this individual into a pre-established categorical system. The Shatabisha native then quickly concludes, okay, this man is adventurous, athletic, courageous, all on the basis of first impression. The Shatabisha native may also quickly conclude, this man wouldn't be a good doctor, he has no precision, he is not detail-oriented or responsible. But this again, all on the basis of first impression. They can so stubbornly hold on to their ideas about a person that even when the person frequently contradicts this idea by their actions, the Shatabisha native disregards the actual actions of the individual and stubbornly sticks to their ideas instead. This skateboarder, for instance, could actually be very cautious, rather introverted, and very detail-oriented, and he could probably excel at medical school. But the Shatabisha native may advise him against it, not on the basis of actually studying and observing how he would behave within that environment, but really, again, based on first impressions and what the Shatabisha native associates skateboarding with. This tendency of Shatabisha natives to stick so stubbornly to their ideas about who a person is without evidence can be especially frustrating when they are parents, for they may repeatedly discourage their children from pursuing hobbies that they may actually be passionate about and may actually excel in, because the Shatabisha parent is not convinced that their child's personality profile is compatible with the given hobby. Instead, the Shatabisha parent may insist that the child pursue a hobby that they strongly believe he is more fit for, even if the child doesn't like or may not even excel in it, but still they push them into those hobbies on the basis of their theories of their child, which are not always tested or evidence-based. Because again, to test, to experiment, these are all terrestrial qualities. This tendency to cling to their unsubstantiated theories over concrete reality also limits them as people, as the Shatabisha native may constantly second-guess themselves about pursuing certain career paths or certain hobbies or activities. One Shatabisha man may actually excel if he took on computer programming, for instance, but because of his own stubborn ideas about who he is, he may fill himself with so much self-doubt that failure becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. They may be so in their heads about their ability that even when they are learning to computer program, their own ideas about themselves paralyze them to such an extent that they perform worse than they would have if they had just approached the activity neutrally, with no preconceived ideas of themselves. But keep in mind once again that Shatabisha has the potential of being highly scientific. Again, once they incorporate more earth elements into their constitution, which would allow them to be more empirical and evidence-based.